Because honestly, what says shocking horror from beyond the grave like a cheesy 1980s love ballad? All right, we are continuing down into the movies of lesser films of Lucio Fulci, one of my favorite Italian filmmakers. But as I said in the Cat in the Brain review, there was a certain period where he was kind of still trying to find himself and kind of just taking a lot of work for hire stuff. And Enigma from 1987. I always knew this movie as the one with the girl with the hand hair. Like I never quite knew what this movie was until later when I saw it. I just remember the cover where it's like, oh yeah, hand hair. I could see myself in the reflection. Damn it. Okay, whatever. It's a professional outlet. So 1987 Enigma. This was sent to me by Meritosis, who does reviews on this channel a lot, and he sent me this for my birthday. It's funny. It's in Spanish, and I was thankfully there was an English track on here so I could watch it. I speak enough Spanish to know the menus. Yeah, so this movie is essentially Patrick, the Australian psychological thriller. Carrie, because Fulci was a huge fan of Carrie, and Prom Night 2, Hello, Mary Lou. You have your kind of homely girl who gets tricked into going out with the cool jock guy, who you come to find out isn't even like a student. He's the gym teacher, and he was in on it. And like they pull a prank on her, and they all laugh at her, and they're all gonna laugh at you. And she runs out in the street and gets fucking crushed by a car. So now she's in a coma. And as the course of the movie goes on, they put like green makeup on her almost. I know it's supposed to be like her getting sickly and like dying and stuff, but she looks like if you ever seen the movie Zombie Lake, which is a German Spanish co-production where the Nazi zombies just have green grease paint on. It's really cheesy. It's like if you watch a old commercials for Halloween where they go like, oh, the paint stuff, and it's like a kid dressed as like Frankenstein's monster, and they just put green paint on him. That's what this girl looks like as the movie goes on. So she's got staples in her face, and then she's got like a headband on that's just perpetually bleeding. And they never really tell you how long she was in a coma before the new girl Ava shows up to this private school in Boston. The movie was actually shot in Sarajevo. They tried to pass Sarajevo off as Boston. It looked a lot more like Italy in big portions of this movie. All the actors were Italian or French, and there was a couple American actors because even though it was filmed in Italian, they dubbed it into English, but then they brought the American actors back for a couple more scenes, and they were speaking English. You could tell they're speaking English. The doctor, Robert, don't call me Bob Anderson in the movie. You can tell that he's speaking English, but he's dubbed by another actor. So, Italy. Our main character, Ava, is played by Klaus Kinski's niece. Klaus Kinski is a well-known actor and mentally unwell person. He's dead now, but just look up Klaus Kinski. He's a fucking crazy person. So Ava is sent to this girls' boarding school in Boston. The Italians, like, watch any Italian horror movie. The only places that they seem to know exist in America are New York, Louisiana, and Boston. Like, that's where they all are set, basically. And this one kind of encapsulates both of them because the homely girl whose mom is the janitor who got herself Patricked, she's originally from Louisiana, which is a scene which is brought up later in probably the movie's most well-known scene where the girl is covered in snails, which we'll get to that. So Ava gets to the school, and she's right away, she's kind of turned on by the gym teacher, who's like this just like dude who like, I don't know. He looks like a slimy, like he looks like an Italian portraying a slimy American. Even on the date, like he wants to have sex with her in the gym, like the school gym. He yells at the poor janitor lady to leave, or he's going to take away her bucket. and then her eyes glow red. But like he's got like a stained tank top on, and I was like, all right, good for you, man. Um, so Ava gets possessed by the spirit of the homely girl, and she goes about taking out her revenge on the people who wronged her, and her mother doesn't quite know what's going on, and then each of them die in unique ways. This is definitely not one of Fulci's better movies, but when it comes to Fulci, like it's like pizza and sex. Like even when it's bad, it's still pizza or sex. uh, he was clearly trying to get away from the zombie films and the more Lovecraftian films and going into something a little bit more supernatural. He was a huge fan of Carrie, so you can see that movie's influence in this a lot. And you could tell he also put in the co-ed girls in lingerie kind of thing because of the popularity of the American slasher film at that point as well. There's also he almost seems like he's also trying to channel Argento a lot in this movie. The score isn't done by Fabio Frizzi this time, and it does have that blend that Fulci was doing with like Phenomenon, where he was going with the kind of gothic sound mixed with electric guitars. And here it doesn't quite work. And he's doing this, a lot of his scenes, a lot of his shot compositions remind me a lot of Fulci, remind me of Argento, as if Fulci was trying to, be seen in a different way, try something different. Which I respect. There's some interesting in-camera effects in this. Not good, but interesting. Some model work, which at first you're like, oh, that's cool. But then the longer the camera lingers on it, you're like, oh, okay, well, Toho did a better job than that with their miniatures. You have a girl who she's at lunch. They're offering her snails. And she freaks out about it because she hates snails. And then Ava, who was also in, trying to think where I saw her before. Oh, she's definitely in Umberto Lenzi's Blade in the Dark. I know that for a fact. And she's also in Demons 3. And I looked her up, and she's also in Red Sonja, the Brigitte Nielsen movie. So I was like, oh, that's cool. All right, I've seen her in other things before. I definitely remembered her from Blade in the Dark, because that's one of the first Italian horror movie, like giallo films that I saw, and then worked my way backwards into seeing like the good stuff. The 80s were interesting, but they had definitely strayed further away from Bava and Argento and people like that, as you were getting more into Lenzi and Bruno Mattei and people like that. So you have the girl, she hates snails, and Ava starts going like, oh, where I come from in Louisiana, they're like, wait, you're not from Louisiana, you're from Boston. You're like, oh, something's going on. And then the girl wakes up in the middle of the night, and she's covered head to toe in snails, and she's naked. I am like leaning against my bed so I could have Italian posters in the background, and my foot's falling asleep. She's covered head to toe in snails, and they're real snails, and it's disgusting. Nothing against snails, but I feel really bad for that actress who's just covered in these things, and it's gross to look at. So I don't know. I guess she dies of fright because they're not covering. Like, there's one that's in her mouth, which is obviously fake. It's like in the Beyond, where the obviously fake spider kills the guy. So that's kind of the standout scene of the movie, is this chick covered in snails, and it just goes on for a really long time to an uncomfortable level because they're real snails, and it's super gross. I'm gonna sit down here now so my foot's not asleep. Bring the camera down. There we go. We're adjusting as we go. You get another girl who she loses an earring, so she and Ava sneak into the museum, which is clearly in another country, but again, they're like, no, Boston, totally. As Ava hides from her, she goes looking for her, and like the snake on an old Etruscan statue comes alive and scares her, and then another statue like comes alive and grabs her, but it's clearly a dude in a rubber suit because you could see the rubber buckling in the back, and that's probably why they don't shoot it that much. You see the reflection in the comatose girl's eye that the nurse sees as she's there, and then Robert, don't call me Bob Anderson, is kind of trying to figure out what's going on with it's the coincidence that all these girls are dying at the school that had something to do with this girl who's in a coma. And the coma girl, anytime a murder happens, has her vital signs spike. So they know that there's some kind of connection going on. Ava falls in love with the doctor, but the doctor loves one of the other girls, which pisses her off. So she has like a mental breakdown in school. Look, I've had one before. I'm not gonna fault Ava. So they put her in like an asylum, and she breaks out. And we know she broke out because we hear the sound of breaking glass, and then we just see her walking on the side of a building. I was like, oh, I guess she broke out. So her mother, the homely girl's mother, now knows that she's in this other girl, possessing her, and the mother goes to the hospital and basically pulls the plug before Ava can kill the woman who the doctor loves. People get their heads cut off. Someone falls out a window and then turns into an obvious dummy. And then when they do finally hit the ground, they clearly just like pretended to fall from right next to the camera because there's no like, it's just. And then her boyfriend doesn't hear her screaming or jump out a window, wakes up, puts her robe on, looks out the window, and then the window cuts his head off, which falls like right next to her, which I thought was actually pretty cool. Probably took a bunch of times for it to do that. And given how Fulci was a hard person to work with, I bet he fucking lost his mind. If you ever seen the documentary for the making of Aliens, how many times it took to throw Bishop's like upper torso to get it to land properly. They did like hundreds and hundreds of takes of it. So I can just like, that's James Cameron, who's also insane, but I doubt he screamed at his people as much as Fulci apparently did. Yeah, and then her soul leaves, and they make the assumption like she's going to heaven. It's like, no, dude, you used like possession powers to take over a chick who was just a little promiscuous, who got sent to a boarding school, and you fucking killed a bunch of people who pulled a prank on you, and now you get to go to heaven? What the fuck? But, Fulci's Italian, and Italians are very Catholic, and Catholics have their own beliefs. Yeah, there's a really bizarre sex scene in this movie, too, where they're, like, in, like, this red room, and Ava, fantastic body, great ass, she's like on top of the doctor and then just starts like biting him. And it's just like these shots, sort of like the same thing he was doing in Cat in the Brain, where the camera will just come up and then go back, come up and go back. And it's like every time you see her, she's got more blood around her mouth, but then sometimes there's less. And it reminds me of the joke in Wet Hot American Summer when the woman who directed Cocaine Bear, who's in that, she's eating ribs, and every time that Paul Rudd turns back to her, the ribs, like barbecue sauce on her face, is bigger or smaller in a different place. It's just like, it was kind of funny. You could tell that Fulci was trying to do something here. He was trying to make more of a metaphysical, psychological, supernatural kind of thing. Probably trying to dip his toe into doing the Argento route, like I said. But in the end, it feels very much like a job, and outside of the Snail Scene, which was really the standout, and maybe even the rubber man, the rubber statue, which reminded me a little bit of the beginning of Wishmaster as well, when all the statues come alive, but not as good as what K&B did. I don't think that his regular effects team worked on this one. So it's lesser Fulci, but there is still some interesting stuff in it, and it just made me want to watch Patrick and Prom Night 2, Hello Mary Lou, which is so much better than Prom Night 1. which was a slasher movie with Jamie Lee Curtis that has a well choreographed disco dance scene that everyone in the school just stops what they're doing as they perform, I'd be like, yo, like, everybody's here to have fun, Jamie Lee Curtis. This ain't fucking about you. But I like this one better than like Manhattan Baby. We're in the era kind of around Sodoma's Ghost and Touch of Death and stuff like that, which are films that I'm not crazy about. I've never seen all of Sodoma's Ghost, as I said in the other one. I don't know. After you get past a certain point in his filmography, it just feels like he's, copying himself or copying other people. It just didn't seem he had the same fire for this stuff that you would see in something like The Beyond, or Zombie, or Seven Notes in Black, or The Black Cat. Even The Black Cat was a pretty good one as well. A lot of people catching on fire and jumping out windows in that movie. So even he had his Poe period. Argento did as well when he and George Romero worked together on Two Evil Eyes. That movie's not great, but it's interesting, and it just made me. I was thinking about that while I was watching the Netflix series Fall of the House of Usher, because that one has a lot of the exact same Poe stories in it, and it's kind of told in a very similar way, where there's one overarching Poe story, and then all of the other pieces fit within that, just like that Mike Flanagan did with Fall of the House of Usher. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend that one. I don't know, like just like Cat in the Brain, if you're a completist of Fulci's filmography, I would say check it out. I mean, I do appreciate Martosa sending me this. It's nice to get gifts, especially, it's cool to be even thought of on your birthday. But it is cool that he sent me this and a nice card. And people are like, who do you know in Chile? And I'm like, I got friends everywhere, man. Not really. But no, I'm a big Italian film fan. It's cool to see watching these movies all these years, and if you're just getting into them for the first time, you're going to notice a lot of actors, a lot of musical cues, a lot of set pieces that are shared. Dub actors obviously are very, very much the same people. You could always pick out like Edward Mannix's voice when it comes to a lot of these movies. I don't know. It's not one of his best, but it's interesting. And again, by the end, when the girl finally they pull the plug on her, it's really like Ava's about to stab, and the mom yanks the fucking thing out of her arm that is like giving her the drip, and that kills her. Sure, the Italian healthcare system is very different than America. Pulling the thing out of your arm would cost you $12,000 here, even with insurance. But then Ava's dead too, which is like, she was just possessed. Like, there was no, what? How do you explain that to her parents? Hey, we sent our daughter to Boston and she died, but it's because she was possessed. But we didn't know she was possessed. Only the mom knew she was possessed. And then who's going to take the word of the cleaning lady at this prestigious school? And then how are you going to explain all the headless teenagers and fucking people who are strangled to death by Etruscan marble statues? I don't know. It all works on dream logic, I guess. That's what Fulci's good at. Back of the box, that's the dude's butt. Actually, no, it's the chick's butt. No, that's his butt. That's a weird choice to make, But yeah, so if you haven't seen it yet and you're interested in what I'm talking about right now, give Hand's Hair a look. And I'll see what other Fulci movies. I want to eventually do New York Ripper, which was 1981, so that was still very much in the Gates of Hell trilogy time period, but it is probably his most mean-spirited movie, set in 42nd Street, New York in 1981. 81 was the highest crime rate that New York had ever seen, and it is just filthy, dirty, and oily, and sweaty, and that's the one where Fulci's distaste for women is most on stage. But yeah, I don't know. There was something interesting about all of his films that kind of, Nightmare and Dreamscape vibe to all of them. And this one has that same feeling, but it is definitely a lesser film in his filmography. But if you want to see a girl, killed by snails, this is the movie for that. I thought they were going to violate her or something like that, because that seemed like something they would do in this kind of movie. But Fulci, he showed great restraint. But or yeah, all the deaths are just fucking weird. Like, I understand he was probably trying to get away from the gore factor of stuff, because even like hunky, inappropriate gym teacher just gets strangled by his own reflection. Obviously, because he's so vain, he probably thought this song was about him. Get that reference? Yeah, and they play like Whisper Down the Lane. Like, one girl in the class finds out about it, and she's like, Fred's dead. Fred's dead. Fred kicked the bucket. And then it gets to the last girl, and she cries in the class, and the teacher's like, what's the problem here? Which has like the teachers also have like a Suspiria vibe to them. But it's like, tell us you're having an affair with the gym teacher without telling us you're having an affair with the gym teacher. Okay, the one who cried. And then like Ava, because she obviously, her possession powers did it, she's like sitting smugly over in the corner, looking, cold and French. No, I'm trying to I'm trying to think of the other deaths in this movie. None of them are that great. I do love when the girl with the one head that's cut off. It's clearly that the head is the person's head is clearly just underneath blankets and stuff like that, and then they just put blood around it. A little bit like Devil Hunter, which is a cannibal zombie movie that Jess Franco made. It's fucking terrible. It has this like 7-foot black dude who's completely nude, with just this massive dong and like what looks like golf balls for eyes, going around killing people. And there's like a model from America who's out there, and she's kidnapped, and they got to go find her. But this one dude who's having like Vietnam flashbacks, and the dubbing is just awful. He's like, I just see Vietnam in my head. I need to take a pill. He gets his head cut off, and literally all they did was dug a hole and had him stand in it and cover it with leaves, because you could, like, his head's laying like this, but like his eyes are still blinking, and his mouth, he's like trying to keep the saliva in. So I was like, Euro cinema at its finest. I love that shit. It's so... the reason that I like these movies so much, and like the shit I've got behind me, is this is the Turkish poster for Zombie and the Dr. Butcher MD. The MD stands for Medical Deviant on the poster. Or Conquest, which is above me, which is another Fulci movie that I should go into. It's Fulci trying to do fantasy sword and sandals because of the success of Conan the Barbarian in the American film market. Influenced so much shit, because he also did Ator, the Fighting Eagle, which the one of the other ones would be featured on actually two of them would be featured on MST3K, but Conquest is just bizarre, man. There's like magic bows and arrows, and like dudes' heads getting squeezed in the back so their brains come out, like in Gates of Hell. But again, what a weird filmography to go from like, oh, we're gonna do Patrick, we're gonna do Zombie, we're gonna do Lovecraft, we're gonna do Conan the Barbarian with, because the main villain in Conquest is completely nude the entire movie, except for a golden mask and a snake wrapped around her. So whenever people do YouTube reviews of it, they could barely show the villain because she's naked in every scene. But that's it's cool. It's cool to see a weird, diverse filmography, and maybe I'll get into some more Claudio Fragasso and Bruno Mattei stuff. I know I did Terminator 2, Shocking Dark on here, but they have so many great movies. Ones with Red Brown, which is basically like a Predator ripoff. It's amazingly bad. Robo Wars. I don't know. That's it. I'm just rambling at this point, just talking about weird Euro cinema, because from the time I discovered it, you always knew when you were a kid, movies that were like American, British, Japanese. You knew which obviously the Japanese ones, because everyone's Japanese. But like the Hammer films and all that. The first Hammer film I ever saw was the Seven Golden Vampires, I believe, which was a Shaw Brothers Hammer Films co-collaboration. Peter Cushing was in that one, and because that was on TV, constant, like local TV, when I was a little kid. So I would see that one a lot, and then you see like the Satanic Rites of Dracula and his Mummy, and Christopher Lee's Mummy, and the Cushing Frankenstein films, and Count Yorgo. That's a pretty cool one. But but then when you saw the Euro films, you knew that something wasn't quite right. Even though some of them were shot made to look like America, you knew that something was quite off about it. And not just the dubbing, because the Japanese films, you accepted the dubbing. And that added also to the joy of, to the charm of the entire thing. But when it came to discovering the European films, like I said, Blade in the Dark is one of the first ones that I had seen. And then from there, kind of like learning more about these things, and then seeing a lot of the lesser ones before I had seen the bigger ones. Suspiria came along later in the game for me. I had seen Deep Red first, and when it came to Fulci, I saw Black Cat first, and I thought it was British at one point. Just because some of the actors in it, it felt like it could have been like an Amicus film, which was another British company at the time. They did like Vampire Circus and Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, the Amicus ones, not the American ones. I became obsessed sort of with the European cinema at the time. And you see, if you trace it back to World War II, they were under such strict restrictions and censorship during World War II and coming out of it, that once they were able to kind of get into the gothic horror stuff, like Mario Bava's Black Sabbath, and into the Italian crime films and the spaghetti westerns, and into the giallo films, not in that order, they all came differently, but they were all going at one point. The Italian film market was churning shit out like crazy, and there was so many different types of films, and they were trying to ape films that were coming out in America and coming out in France, and making their own kind of ripoffs of those movies, but also forging their own path from that. And that's where, people like Argento came out working for Bava. And like I said before, Fulci had done kids movies and Western movies and porno movies, and then he's doing this, and he gets lucky. It's just kind of taking jobs. And you kind of get to the end of the run when Michela Suave did Cemetery Man, which was based on the Italian comic book Dylan Dog, which they made an American version of Dylan Dog with Brandon Routh. Not good, don't recommend it, but those comic books are brilliant, if not a little racist in some parts. And Mike Mignola did a lot of the American covers for them, the guy who created Hellboy, and his style works so well with the Dylan Dog stories. But I'd say that was probably the last great Italian horror movie, was that in 94, Cemetery Man, because that one looks like, and it has nothing to do with Fulci. Well, it kind of does have something to do with Fulci. So I'm not just talking to hear myself. That's what I usually do. It was sort of like, because he had done The Church before that, but it was like, it's a little Terry Gilliam, it's a little Tim Burton, with that Euro flair to it, and with a British lead. I was going to say Dermot Mulroney, but that's not it. Dylan, the guy who was the voice of Prince Charming in Shrek 2. I don't know. And I love that movie. And Anna Fulci, who's the three she's in that movie, is one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my entire life. I love the scene she's having sex on her husband's grave with him, and he comes back from the dead. That's a great one. Just again, it's all visually. That was the last one that felt like someone creating something artistic and beautiful, but also grotesque as well, and gothic, which they started out as. You could draw a direct parallel between Black Sabbath and not the band, the movie, and Cemetery Man, and along the way, it's picking up all of these different quirks from other films as it goes. The stylistic elements of Dario Argento, the kind of dark comedy of somebody like Umberto Lenzi, and the gore factor from Fulci. Actually, I would say even like Claudio Fragasso, some of the unintentional comedy. Watch Troll 2 and you'll know what I'm talking about there. But no, I'm a huge Italian horror fan. That's why I have an entire room here, wall of Italian movie posters, all framed, and I've done a couple of them on this channel, but there's just something unique about them and interesting. And like most grindhouse style movies, they look like they're made on another planet, and there's something really cool about that, especially in a day and age we live in now, where a lot of like in this one, there's like a 10-minute scene where they say retard like 20 times, and I was like, holy shit, you hear things now and you're like, oh, you'd never get away with that. Although, wasn't there like a Black Eyed Peas song where it's like, let's get retarded in here? And that was like 10 years ago or before that. It was probably 2008, and I'm 2000 late. See, I've been going on way too long. All right, that's it. Tell me what your favorite Italian horror movie is. And don't give me the regulars. I don't want to hear, Suspiria. Because again, hot take, I think that the remake of Suspiria is actually better than Argento's Suspiria. Fight me, internet. You know it's true. But give me some weird ones. Give me the weird Luigi Cozzi's Godzilla movie, which is fucking bizarre if you've never seen that before. Luigi also made Star Crash. He also made the two Lou Ferrigno Hercules movies where Hercules throws a bear into outer space. God bless you, Italy. All right, guys, I'll see you next week.